Imagine waking up and realizing your life has changed forever in just seconds. Helen Carter survived a terrible accident that took her husband's life and left her paralyzed. But the nightmare didn't stop there. The very uncle she trusted stole her husband's life insurance money, leaving her completely helpless, alone with two young children. How does someone rise after losing everything? How do you find strength when even your own family betrays you? And will Helen be able to rebuild her life after such pain and injustice? Before diving into this incredible story of courage and triumph, make sure to follow the channel so you don't miss any inspiring stories like this one. The morning had started like any other, deceptively calm. After Helen and her husband dropped off their 3-year-old daughter Emma and 2-year-old son Noah at preschool, Daniel was supposed to drive her to the accounting office where she worked before heading to his own job. They were chatting casually about everyday things, the bills to pay, Emma's excitement about learning new songs, Noah's endless curiosity, when suddenly, without warning, a car tore through a red light at full speed. In that single, brutal instant, the fragile sense of normalcy collapsed. The accident came in an instant. A sharp screeching noise of brakes failing, metal crunching against metal, the world spinning violently out of control. Glass shattered, airbags deployed, and Helen felt herself lifted and thrown simultaneously, a surreal and terrifying sensation. Pain exploded through her body, sharp and searing, followed by a numbness she couldn't shake. Confusion and panic clawed at her mind as the sirens of the ambulance pierced the air, a horrifying soundtrack to the chaos around her. She remembered fragments, the smell of burning rubber, the metallic taste of blood, the distant cries of someone calling her name. She tried to move, but her body refused, refusing in a way that was terrifyingly final. Then there was darkness, broken, disorienting, endless. When Helen opened her eyes again, it was in a hospital room, sterile and bright, with an unfamiliar quietness punctuated by the occasional beep of machines. Her body ached from injuries that seemed impossible, but her mind was consumed by the most unbearable fear, Daniel. She tried to speak to ask for him, but the words stuck in her throat. A doctor approached, his face calm but somber. Helen felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "Helen," the doctor began carefully, "there's news about your husband." Her heart seized. The world seemed to tilt, and she grasped the bed rails for support. "Daniel, is he alive?" Her voice cracked, small and frightened. The doctor's expression did not change, but his eyes betrayed the weight of his words. "I'm very sorry. Daniel didn't survive the accident." The words landed like a physical blow. Time slowed, the world tilting further. She felt the room spinning around her. Daniel was gone. Her partner, her confidant, the man she had dreamed with and planned a life with, gone. She barely had a moment to breathe before another crushing reality struck her. "There's more, Helen. Your injuries, the spinal trauma is severe. Unfortunately, you will never walk again." Her body went numb, not from pain, but from disbelief. Paralysis. Loss. The unthinkable. Her children, oblivious in their classrooms, playing and laughing as life continued for them, while her world had been ripped apart in seconds. Hours passed before she found enough strength to call Emma's school. She could hear her daughter's voice, bright and innocent. "Mommy, is Daddy coming home?" Emma asked, her tone curious but tinged with worry. Helen's throat tightened. The tears welled, and she forced a trembling smile through sobs. "No, sweetheart. Daddy isn't coming home." A pause on the other end, and Helen could almost feel Emma trying to comprehend the impossibility. "What do you mean, Mommy?" He was okay this morning." Helen swallowed hard, her voice gentle but firm. "I know, darling. I know it's hard. Daddy loved you more than anything, and he'll always be with us in our hearts. But we have to be brave, my love. Mommy and you and Noah will get through this together. Emma's little voice quivered. But I don't want him gone. I know, sweetie, Helen whispered, clutching the phone like it could somehow bridge the distance. I know. I feel the same way. But we will stay strong. We will take care of each other, and we will honor Daddy's love by living our lives fully together. Throughout the day, Helen sat in the hospital room, unable to rest, her mind circling endlessly around Daniel, the children, and the unimaginable future. Nurses came and went, offering routine care, but no words could soothe the raw, unending ache of loss. And as the evening fell, she realized the harsh truth. She was alone. Alone with her grief, alone with her body that would no longer obey her, and alone in a world that had suddenly become unrecognizable. In a single moment, life can shatter. But in that shattering, courage is born. And even when you cannot walk, your heart can still carry you forward. The days following the accident were a blur of pain and disbelief. Helen went through the motions of arranging the funeral, her mind numb, her body exhausted. She watched as family members and friends offered hollow condolences, many of them distant or distracted. The reality of Daniel's absence was unbearable, and yet she had to carry on for Emma, for Noah, and for herself. On the day of the funeral, Helen struggled to maintain composure, her wheelchair navigating the church aisle slowly as she held Noah tightly in her lap and Emma's hand in hers. The flowers, the soft hymns, and the muted voices of strangers blended into a surreal haze. People who had once been close, friends who shared dinners, laughter, and vacations with the Carters, disappeared quietly. After the funeral, calls went unanswered, and visits never came. Helen felt a bitter pang of realization. Many had loved Daniel, yes, but few cared for her. Few cared for her children. Amid the silence of lost support, a phone call came from the bank, shaking Helen from her grief. Ms. Carter, this is regarding your late husband's life insurance policy. The funds are available to you. Hope flickered briefly in Helen's chest. The money could provide a lifeline, a way to regain some footing in a world that had left her reeling. But even as relief warmed her heart, uncertainty lurked. She didn't know who she could trust anymore. Not friends, not distant relatives. That evening, as she pondered her next steps, someone appeared at her house doorway. Mr. Crawford, a distant uncle she barely remembered. His presence was startling, and for a moment, Helen felt a mixture of wariness and cautious relief. Helen, I heard about the accident. I'm here to help, he said smoothly, eyes careful, calculating. I'll make sure you and the children are taken care of. Helen blinked, unsure what to feel. Memories of a distant, indifferent uncle surfaced, leaving her wary. But for now, with no other support in sight, she allowed herself a cautious thought. Maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't face this alone. As she looked at the children sleeping quietly in the room, Helen whispered to herself, I have lost so much, but I will survive. I will protect my children, and I will find the strength to rise again. No one can take that away from me. The accident had changed everything. The funeral had confirmed her loss. Friends had disappeared. And yet, amid grief, betrayal, and uncertainty, the first flickers of hope had appeared, the life insurance and the unexpected presence of an uncle claiming to help. Helen had survived the worst day of her life, and now the journey to rebuild had begun. The next week, she arrived at Mr. Crawford's grand home, wheelchair navigating the polished floors. He greeted her warmly, arms wide, a smile that seemed genuine. Emma clung to her mother wide, while Noah squirmed in her lap. You'll be safe here, Mr. Crawford assured her. I'll make sure everything is taken care of. For a brief moment, Helen allowed herself to breathe. She let down the armor she had been forced to wear. Maybe she could finally rest. But appearances, she would soon learn, can be deceiving. Days passed, and Helen began to sense subtle changes. a tightness in Mr. Crawford's expression when she mentioned the insurance money, a lingering glance at documents she had left on the table. Then came the day that would shatter any illusion of safety. Helen returned from running errands with the children to find the house eerily quiet. Her heart raced. Papers were scattered across the floor. Drawers left open. Panic clenched her chest. "Uncle Crawford," she called, voice shaking. He appeared from the study, calm, collected, but there was a coldness in his eyes she hadn't seen before. "Helen, we need to talk." Her stomach sank. She already knew somehow what was coming. "The insurance money," he began, his tone smooth as silk but sharp as a knife. "I've decided it's best if I manage it myself. You don't need to worry about it." Helen's mind raced. "What are you saying?" Her voice trembled. You promised you'd help us." "I am helping you," he said, almost mockingly. "Just not in the way you imagined." And then it hit her. The truth she had refused to see. The money, the lifeline that had given her hope, was gone. Mr. Crawford had taken it all. Every last dollar. And as if that weren't enough, he looked at her with an unsettling calm. "You'll have to find another place to stay. This house isn't suitable for your situation anymore." Helen felt her world collapse again. Betrayal wasn't supposed to feel like this. Cold, precise, calculated. She looked at Emma and Noah, tears blurring her vision. No, this can't be happening," she whispered, voice cracking. "How could you?" Her uncle shrugged as if it were nothing. "Family comes first, Helen. Sometimes that means making hard choices." The words felt like a punch to her chest. Every ounce of hope she had clung to was stripped away. Alone in the hallway, surrounded by the echoes of her former trust, Helen realized a painful truth. She could not rely on anyone. Not family, not friends, not acquaintances who pretended to care. That night, as she sat with Emma and Noah in the tiny corner of the house she had been allowed to occupy, Helen whispered to herself, "I am not broken. I am not defeated. If no one else will fight for me, I will fight for myself, for my children." It was a vow forged in fire. Pain and betrayal had tested her, but Helen refused to yield. She had survived tragedy once. She would survive this. She would rebuild. She would rise. Her mind raced with plans, strategies, ways to ensure her children's safety and her own dignity. She couldn't control what her uncle had done, but she could control how she responded. And in that moment, amidst fear and heartbreak, Helen discovered something crucial. The power to survive and thrive was already within her. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who smile through the pain, carry the world on their shoulders, and keep moving forward, even when the path is impossible. Helen looked at Emma's sleepy face and Noah's tiny hands clutching hers. She drew a deep breath. The world had betrayed her, but she would not betray herself. Not now. Not ever. And with that, she began to plan her escape, not just from her uncle's house, but from the chains of despair that threatened to define her life. Helen pushed open the doors of the emergency shelter with a mixture of fear and determination. The bright sunlight of the city outside felt like a distant memory. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of disinfectant, old blankets, and quiet desperation. She felt every eye on her as she maneuvered her wheelchair, Emma clutching her hand, Noah in her lap. "This is home?" Emma asked softly, her small voice trembling. Helen forced a gentle smile. "It's temporary, sweetheart. But it's safe, and we'll make it through this together." The shelter was crowded, noisy, chaotic, but also alive with stories of resilience. Women with tired eyes and calloused hands moved about, some whispering encouragement, others sharing quiet moments of sorrow. Helen felt the sting of shame in her chest. From wealth and comfort to this, she couldn't help but wonder how quickly life could strip away everything. Her first night was the hardest. Noah refused to sleep. Emma clung to her tightly, and Helen felt the weight of every loss pressing on her shoulders. "It's okay," she whispered over and over, as if saying it enough might make it true. "We're okay. We'll be okay." The next morning, she met other mothers in the shelter, women who had faced hunger, abuse, loss, and betrayal. One of them, a woman named Sarah, sat beside her while rocking her baby. "It's not easy," she said softly, "but this place, it shows you that you're not alone. Even when the world turns its back, people survive. You will too." Helen listened, heart slowly warming to the unexpected kindness. She realized that the true wealth she had lost wasn't money. It was trust, comfort, and a sense of safety. And yet, these women were teaching her a new kind of wealth: resilience, courage, and hope. Days turned into weeks. Helen learned the routines of the shelter, the meal times, the chores, the support groups. She found herself quietly admiring the strength of the women around her. Each story she heard, each struggle she witnessed, became a source of inspiration. They were her new teachers, guiding her toward a path she hadn't yet imagined. Yet the shadow of her former life lingered. Helen discovered that some people she had once considered friends had envied her wealth, the life she had lost, and had whispered cruel words in her absence. The betrayal stung sharply, but it also ignited a fire. Helen made a silent vow. She would not be defined by what she had lost. She would rise, not for revenge, but for herself and for her children. One evening, while helping another mother organize donations, Helen paused and watched Emma play with other children in the shelter. Her tiny daughter's laughter was a balm to her aching heart. "Mommy, can we stay here forever?" Emma asked innocently. Helen chuckled softly, though her eyes glistened with tears. "Not forever, my love, but we'll stay long enough to learn, to grow, and then we'll build a life that's ours." The nights were still long and filled with doubt. The mornings came with exhaustion, yet Helen's determination grew stronger each day. She began to see her condition not as a limitation, but as a challenge to overcome. Every obstacle, every setback, became a lesson in perseverance. She whispered to herself often, "You may be down, but you are not out. Every struggle is a step towards strength. Every tear waters the seed of your future." And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Helen began to plan. She would find a way to provide for her children, to regain some control over their lives. She would use her mind, her skills, her heart. The insurance money was gone, her uncle's betrayal still raw, but the spark of hope, the fire of determination, refused to be extinguished. Helen knew it would be a long road, filled with hardship and uncertainty. But she also knew this. She had survived tragedy before, and she would survive betrayal. She was learning that survival wasn't just about keeping her children fed and safe. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her purpose, and her power. Strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't. That night, as she tucked Noah into the donated crib and kissed Emma's forehead, Helen whispered to herself, her voice firm and unwavering, "I may be at the bottom, but I will rise. I will find the path forward. And when I do, nothing will stop me from building the life we deserve." The days at the shelter blurred together, meals, chores, bedtime routines, but Helen refused to let despair settle in. Each day, she pushed herself a little further, learning new ways to adapt to life in a wheelchair, discovering the limits of her strength and determination. One morning, as the sun filtered through the narrow windows of the shelter, Helen sat with her laptop on a makeshift table. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. Small online jobs, data entry, virtual assistants, anything she could manage from home were only options. But each attempt ended in frustration. Her condition slowed her down. Simple tasks became monumental challenges. "You're working too hard," a gentle voice said. Helen looked up to see Lisa, a mother she had met at the shelter, smiling kindly. Lisa had been through her own struggles, divorce, eviction, single parenthood, but her energy remained unbroken. "You have so much potential, Helen," Lisa continued. "You're organized, smart, and resilient. Don't limit yourself to the small jobs. You can aim higher. You just need to believe it's possible." Helen sighed, a mixture of doubt and longing in her chest. "I don't know if anyone would even consider me. I've lost everything, Lisa. My mobility, my home, my husband. I'm not sure I have anything left to offer." Lisa reached out and squeezed Helen's hand. "That's exactly why they should consider you. Because you've survived more than most people can imagine. That kind of strength, that's rare. That's invaluable." For the first time in weeks, Helen felt a glimmer of possibility. Could she truly find a way out? Could she take her hidden skills, her ability to organize, to manage, to think strategically, and turn them into something meaningful? With Lisa's encouragement, Helen began crafting a professional resume, highlighting not just her previous work experience, but her resilience, problem-solving skills, and determination. Every sentence she typed was a small act of defiance against the despair that had tried to claim her. Weeks later, with trembling hands, she sent her resume to a company she barely knew. It felt like a shot in the dark, a desperate attempt to grasp at a future that seemed almost unattainable. Yet there was a strange calm in the act. She had done what she could, and now the rest was out of her hands. Helen returned to the shelter, feeling both anxious and hopeful. Emma and Noah played quietly nearby, and Helen let herself smile at the sight of them. "We'll be okay," she whispered, more to herself than to them. "I promise we'll be okay." That night, as she tucked the children into bed, Helen repeated a mantra she had begun to carry with her. Hope is not a dream. Hope is a plan. And every plan begins with a single step. Even in the darkness of the shelter, amidst uncertainty and hardship, Helen felt something she hadn't in weeks, the quiet thrill of possibility. She couldn't see what lay ahead, but she could feel it, a small flickering light at the edge of her world, hinting that perhaps, just perhaps, life could change again. The next morning, Helen received an unexpected message. Her resume had caught the attention of a prominent CEO, someone she had never imagined she could reach. Her heart pounded as she read the email. "We would like to schedule an interview with you. Your story is inspiring, and we believe you could be a valuable addition to our team." Tears sprang to her eyes. Emma noticed and tilted her head. "Mommy, are you happy?" Helen smiled through the tears, lifting Emma into her arms. "Yes, my love. Mommy is hopeful. Very hopeful." For the first time in months, Helen allowed herself to believe in the possibility of change. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but the first hint of opportunity had arrived, and she was ready to seize it with every ounce of courage she could summon. Even the darkest night will end, and the sun will rise. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Helen whispered these words to herself, letting them anchor her as she prepared for the next step in her journey. The path forward was uncertain, but one thing was clear: she would not let life's trials define her. She would define herself, and she would rise for Emma, for Noah, and for herself. Helen's life had been a series of uphill battles, but she refused to stop climbing. The days in shelter had taught her resilience. The nights of doubt had forged determination. And now, with a single email in her inbox, a new chapter was beginning. The message came from Michael Bennett, a CEO known for his visionary approach and unconventional hiring practices. He had read her resume and, more importantly, her story. "We believe in people who rise from adversity," the email read. "Your determination is remarkable. We would like to offer you an interview for a strategic position in our company." Helen's hand shook as she held her laptop. Emma peeked over her shoulder. "Mommy, is that good news?" "It's amazing news, sweetheart," Helen replied, pulling her daughter close. "It's a chance to change our lives." Preparations for the interview were daunting. Helen had never worked in such a high-level environment, and her physical limitations added a layer of anxiety. But she refused to let fear dictate her path. She practiced responses, refined her story, and reminded herself of all she had already overcome. On the day of the interview, Helen arrived at the sleek office building, wheelchair gliding smoothly across the polished floors. Michael Bennett greeted her personally, extending a firm handshake and a warm smile. "Helen, your story precedes you. We've never met, but I already know you're someone extraordinary." Helen felt her heart swell with a mixture of pride and nervousness. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I'm honored to be here." The interview was unlike anything she had experienced. Michael asked questions that probed not only her skills but her character. He wanted to understand how she had navigated loss, betrayal, and adversity. Helen answered honestly, with courage and empathy. She spoke of Emma and Noah, of the shelter, of the fire that had kept her moving forward. "Your determination is inspiring," Michael said, leaning back in his chair. "We need people like you, people who see challenges as opportunities and lead with both intelligence and heart." Helen left the office that day with a sense of empowerment she had not felt in months. She had faced her fears, shared her truth, and been recognized for her strength. And soon, her determination would be rewarded in ways she had only dreamed of. A few days later, she received the call that would change everything. "Helen," Michael's voice was warm and enthusiastic, "we would like to offer you a strategic position in our company. We will provide the resources you need to care for your children and thrive in this role. Your journey of resilience has earned you this opportunity." Helen's hands trembled, tears streaming down her face. Emma and Noah watched her with wide eyes. "Mommy, you did it!" Emma exclaimed. Helen hugged her children tightly. "No, my loves, we did it together. Mommy couldn't have done this without you." Yet, even in this moment of triumph, Helen sensed the stirrings of old challenges. Former colleagues, distant relatives, and acquaintances began reaching out, eager to reconnect now that she was rising from her struggles. But Helen's experiences had taught her the importance of discernment. She knew not everyone who smiled was trustworthy. Success is not measured by the handouts you receive, but by the battles you overcome and the courage you carry. Helen had risen from the ashes of tragedy, from betrayal and loss. She had claimed the first victory in her long journey toward independence and empowerment. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, she felt a spark of control, an understanding that her life, her children, and her destiny were once again in her hands. That night, as she tucked Noah into bed and kissed Emma's forehead, Helen whispered a promise. "We have come so far, and this is just the beginning. No matter what comes next, we will face it together. And we will rise, always rise." Helen stepped into the office with a mixture of excitement and determination. This was more than a job. It was a chance to rebuild her life, to reclaim the dignity and independence that had been stripped away. And for the first time in months, she felt capable, not despite her challenges, but because of them. Michael Bennett had provided more than an opportunity. He had provided support. From adaptive technology to flexible schedules, Helen found ways to integrate her skills and intellect into the company's strategic operations. She discovered an innate ability to analyze problems, streamline processes, and lead with empathy. Every task she completed was a triumph over her past, a declaration that she was no longer defined by tragedy. Her coworkers quickly noticed her dedication. "Helen, your insight on the Thompson Project is incredible," one colleague remarked. "You've completely changed our approach." Helen smiled, a quiet confidence blooming inside her. "Thank you. I've learned that the best solutions often come from the hardest experiences." Balancing work and motherhood was a challenge, but Helen approached it with careful planning, creativity, and resilience. She organized her schedule meticulously, ensuring she could attend to Emma and Noah while excelling in her role. Michael remained a steadfast ally, providing guidance and encouragement. One evening, after successfully leading a critical presentation, Helen returned home to the shelter. Emma ran to her, arms wide, and Noah giggled from his crib. "Mommy, Mommy, you did it!" Emma exclaimed. Helen scooped them both into her arms, heart swelling. "Yes, we did it together," she whispered, feeling the weight of every struggle she had overcome. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had led to this victory. But even as Helen celebrated her professional success, shadows from the past loomed. Mr. Crawford, the uncle who had betrayed her, attempted to interfere once more, trying to access her professional accounts and disrupt her progress. Helen's heart raced, but this time she was prepared. With careful planning, she reported his actions, protecting not only her career but her children's future. "That's it," Helen whispered to herself, a quiet triumph in her voice. "I will not be held back. I will rise above every obstacle." Her victories were more than personal. They became a source of inspiration to others. Colleagues began to admire her resilience, and mothers at the shelter looked to her as proof that hardship could be transformed into strength. Helen's journey had become a testament to courage, dignity, and unwavering perseverance. Life doesn't just test you, it reveals who you are. And when you rise above, you discover the strength you never knew existed. Helen's days were filled with challenges and triumphs alike. Each decision she made, each problem she solved, reinforced her belief in herself. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a leader, a role model, and a beacon of hope. Late at night, as she tucked Noah into his crib and kissed Emma's forehead, Helen reflected on how far she had come. "We've come a long way, my loves," she whispered. "And this is only the beginning. Nothing can stop us now, not betrayal, not hardship, not doubt. We are unstoppable." Helen had risen above tragedy, betrayal, and fear. She had reclaimed her life, her power, and her dignity. And she knew, deep in her heart, that her journey was far from over. The path ahead would still have obstacles, but she was ready. She had discovered the most important truth of all, that strength, courage, and resilience are born from the hardest trials, and that nothing could ever take away her determination to rise. Helen Carter sat at her kitchen, sunlight streaming through the large windows. The view of the city reminded her of how far she had come, from a hospital bed in a shelter to a place where she could stand, figuratively and literally, with strength and independence. Emma and Noah played nearby, their laughter echoing through the apartment she now called home. Helen watched them, a deep sense of pride swelling in her chest. She had taken tragedy, betrayal, and loss and transformed them into courage, purpose, and power. The journey had not been easy. She had faced betrayal from the one person she thought she could trust. She had struggled with her disability, fought through despair, and navigated the challenges of motherhood alone. But each struggle had strengthened her, teaching her resilience, patience, and the importance of believing in oneself. Helen had not only regained her independence, financially, emotionally, and professionally, but had also found a mission larger than herself. She began mentoring and supporting women in similar situations, showing them that even when life seemed cruel and unfair, it was possible to rise. She offered guidance, resources, and, most importantly, hope. One afternoon, Lisa visited. "Helen, you're incredible," she said, eyes shining. "You've turned pain into power. Look at all the lives you're changing." Helen smiled, glancing at her children playing. "I've learned that strength isn't about what happens to you. It's about how you respond. Every challenge is an opportunity to grow, and every setback is a chance to rise higher." As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the city, Helen reflected on her journey. The life she had once known, the wealth, the comfort, the illusion of security, had been stripped away. But what she had built in its place was far more valuable: independence, dignity, and the ability to inspire others. You cannot control the world around you, but you can control how you rise. Strength is born from struggle, and power is found in perseverance. Helen turned to Emma and Noah. "Remember, my loves," she said softly, "we have the power to overcome anything. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Your life is yours to shape, your dreams are yours to chase, and your heart is strong enough to carry you through every storm." With a sense of fulfillment, Helen looked at the future with confidence. The obstacles she had faced had not defeated her. They had shaped her. And she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she and her children would face them together, unstoppable and empowered. Helen's story is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, it is possible to rise, to reclaim your life, and to shine with your own power. If Helen's journey inspired you, make sure to follow the channel for more stories of courage, resilience, and triumph. Because every story you watch here is a spark of hope, and every person can find their strength, just like Helen did.